So, years and years ago, back in the day when I was a young guy, no, years ago, I never really questioned the theory of evolution. And it is a theory. I had no skin in the game on that debate. I figured I believed in a God, and it just made sense that, there was a big bang. God created all the elements, and through evolution and stages and processes, that I did attribute to God and his work, I figured, yeah, this makes perfect sense. Now, this was prior to becoming a Christian and me being a curious guy watching everything and anything on YouTube. I fell on some debates between young earth creationists, so Christians, that believe in a much younger universe and earth. I think it's a little extreme to say 6,000 years, but I think it's also a little extreme to say that we can quantify and we're sure through scientific processes that the universe is 15 billion years old. I assumed that, science obviously wouldn't state that unless they had some hard science that was probably well above my head. I was pretty shocked when I started watching these debates. I found that the scientists trying to defend the theory of evolution really didn't have much substance to debate with.
The canine kind, the coyote, and the domestic dog, and there's the feline kind, which is the cats, the tiger and the kitten, and you've got humankind. So Darwin said there'd be a change of kinds over many years. So could you give me one example of observable evidence of a change of kinds?
So, for instance, the fossil record shows the common ancestors of all carnivores, that cats and dogs were once linked, once united by a common ancestor.
How long ago?
This, I believe, was like 60 million years ago.
The scientific method must be observable and repeatable. So could you give me one piece of observable evidence for Darwinian evolution?
Okay, I would point to, as one great example, is look at the genetics of the stickleback.
What's that?
So stickleback fish are a very interesting collection of species that were recently isolated after the end of the Ice Age.
What do they become?
They're various species of sticklebacks.
They stayed as fish.
Well, of course, human beings are still fish.
Human beings are fish?
Why, yes, of course they are.
Could you give me an example of Darwinian evolution, not adaptation or speciation, but a change of kinds?
These are changes of kinds.
They're still fish.
They're distinctly different fish.
We have thousands of examples.
Can you give me one?
I can give you thousands.
Just one.
For instance, I would say look at Lenski's experiments with bacteria then.
So what do the bacteria become?
The bacteria are still bacteria, of course.
That's not Darwinian evolution. That's not a change of kinds, is it?
It is a change. It is a change in the genetic makeup of the bacteria, which is
still bacteria. So what do the bacteria become?
A new kind of bacteria.
So it's still bacteria. There's no change of kinds. To summarize, the observable evidence that you give me for Darwinian evolution is bacteria becoming bacteria.
No, it is bacteria acquiring new metabolic capabilities.
You said before that there is lots of evidence for evolution. I just want one observable evidence for Darwinian evolution,
No,
just one.
But I gave you some. You don't want.
Not some, I want one.
Wait, you don't want that.
I want one. Yes, I do. I'm pleading with people.
You asked me to tell you. You asked me to tell you when I've watched one species evolve into another. Isn't that right?
No, one kind into another. There's 14 different definitions of species. So I want a change of kind.
When you're talking about kinds or change in families, you're actually talking about macroevolution. You're talking about changes on the level that separate, say, cats from dogs.
Could you give me any examples of Darwinian evolution?
Well, when you say examples of that, then you have to sort of look at over a longer time frame.
When you say change of kinds, do you mean the evolution of one species from another or to another? Yes, we have that in action actually in the Galapagos.
Could you give me one instance?
Yes, we have an example from a group of birds called Darwin's finches.
What did the finches become?
They become genetically new and anatomically new, recognizably different species.
So they're still finches?
Well, of course, they're still finches, yes.
They're not a change of, there's no change of kind. Darwin spoke of a change of kind. Can you think of any observable evidence for Darwinian evolution where there's a change of kind?
Change of kind. Change of kind. I'm gonna have to think about that one a little longer.
You give me anything that I can see, observe, and test, which is a scientific method for Darwinian evolution, a change of kinds.
Test and observe.
Could you give me observable evidence, which is a scientific method for Darwinian evolution, a change of kinds?
Okay, I gotta think about it. So you want the evidence of it?
I would say
In fact, it was Kent Hovind, a Christian, that wrapped the noose around it, the neck of the theory of evolution. I mean, debate after debate, he made the PhD scientist and biological evolutionary, biologists and stuff like that. He just made them look stupid, and he had really actually smart answers supported in the Bible. I was shocked. So I am now a strong proponent of, I would say, intelligent design. I see intelligence all throughout creation. I see symbiotic systems that cannot exist without each other. Then how did these things, one step at a time, one thing first and then the next, how could that happen if many of the systems that we see on Earth, biological, ecological, all the logicals that you want to say, that they need to exist and to come into fruition at the same time? Evolution, the theory of evolution, and even the Big Bang theory still doesn't explain the starting point. It still doesn't explain what was the cause of the Big Bang, what was there before. It doesn't really answer these things, and it certainly does not answer the most important question of how inorganic matter, elements, how that this matter can become conscious, that can become sentient. Science has no answers for this. I fell upon a extremely interesting article. Slime mold simulates Tokyo Rail Network. So let's get into this research that was published from Japan. In a Japanese laboratory, a group of scientists is encouraging a rapidly expanding amoeba-like blob to consume Tokyo. Thankfully, the blob in question is a slime mold, just around 20 centimeters wide. And Tokyo is represented by a series of oat flakes dotted about a large plastic petri dish. It's all part of a study on better network design through biological principles. Despite growing of its own accord with no plan in mind, the mold has rapidly produced a web of slimy tubes that look a lot like Tokyo's actual railway network. Living things also rely on transport networks, from the protein tracks that run through all of our cells to the gangways patrolled by ant colonies. Like man-made networks, these biological ones face the same balancing act of efficiency and resilience. But unlike man-made networks, they have been optimized through millions of years of evolution, or what I would say is intelligent design. But let's bear with this study. This is, from a scientific perspective. It is still pretty genius. You'll see once. I'm just going to read through it first, then we'll discuss in more details. But the reason I started with intelligent design and evolution, commenting on that at the beginning of the video, is that I see intelligence even in slime. And we'll understand that when we get to the end of the article. Their strategies have to work. If our networks crash, the penalties are power outages or traffic jams. If there's a crash, the penalty is death. To draw inspiration from the biological networks, the university worked with slime mold. I will try and pronounce the actual name of the slime. It is Physarum polycephalum. This amoeba-like creature forages for food by sending out branches, which they call plasmodia, from a central location. Even though it forms vast, sprawling networks, it still remains a single cell. It's incredibly dynamic. Its various veins change thickness and shape, new ones form while old ones vanish, and the entire network can crawl a few centimeters every hour. It's pretty fast. For a mindless organism, the slime mold's skill at creating efficient networks is extraordinary. It can find the most effective way of linking together scattered sources of food, and it can even find the shortest path through a maze. But can it do the same for Tokyo's sprawling city landscape? Taro grew this slime in a wet dish at a place corresponding to Tokyo with oat flakes. Okay, so if you're not grasping what I'm trying to say here, is they put this slime on a growth medium, a petri dish. Then after they put food to represent locations in the major cities of Greater Tokyo area. And they were going to look at this slime and see how it branched out towards the food. And we'll see what happens. So Taro used light to stimulate mountains, lakes, and other prohibitive terrain on his miniature map. The mold soon filled the space with a densely packed web of plasmodia. Eventually, it thinned out its networks to focus on branches that connected the food sources. Even by eye, these final networks bore a striking similarity to the real Tokyo rail system. So here's an image at 0 hours. The yellow stain on the top there, that's the mold. Within 5 hours, we see it starting to branch out to encompassing 6 of the food sources representing areas. Here we see on the top right 8 hours, then 11 hours. Notice how in slide C at 8 hours, you start seeing what looks like veins. Then after at 11 hours, you see that it's further grown And then at 16 hours, we start to see that a lot of these channels have disappeared, and we see this even more drastically after just over 1 day, 26 hours. So we see that these food sources, we have pretty much single railways, single trajectories, single pathways to these food, creating the most efficient pathways. So on the top here, we see the mold network. And then below, we see the actual Tokyo network. Striking resemblance. To me, it just seems that there is a certain field of consciousness within the slime. And there's definitely that field of consciousness, that awareness. Perhaps it's not exactly the same as the consciousness or the awareness of us, but it appears that there is a certain level of consciousness, and that's overlaid with a certain level of intelligence. The slime is just not to me, I just see intelligence, which helps back up even in the most unexpected places, even in slime. A virtual system inspired by a biological one that looks a lot like a man-made one. The reference here is Taro and Associates. It's published in 2010, and it's the rules for biologically inspired adaptive network designs. So this is a citation. Next, I'm going to show you in real time, well, it's sped up, but here is a video of how the slime progressed and evolved and created something as intelligent as us smart people. All right, let's go watch the video.
Going back to, you didn't like my answer of how God did it. God was just, God is outside of time, space, matter. I think you need to stop and look at the theory that you are believing in, apparently, because there are so many thousands of unanswered questions. See, it's much easier for me to believe in the beginning God than to believe in the beginning dirt or matter. The evolutionist does not answer the question. There's 6 different types of evolution, as I shared clearly earlier. If the Big Bang Theory is true, then I would like to know what exploded and where did it come from and where did the energy come from and where did the space come from for the matter to expand into, and where did the organization come from and where did the information come from. There's a whole host of questions that are a whole lot harder for you to answer than in the beginning God. Where's information come from? This universe is not just random molecules circulating around. I mean, it carries information. So the evolutionist never answers the question, where did this information come from? Where did the energy come from? Where did the matter itself come from? And you gripe about my belief. I believe by faith in the beginning God. I know, I admit I don't understand that. But you believe hundreds of things by faith. You don't even understand that you're believing by faith. You think matter is either eternal or can create itself. Well, that's the 2 choices. How did matter get here? The world is here. Where did the matter come from? Did it just happen by itself, or is it all just imaginary? We're not really here at all. You're faced with the option of, we're not really here, this is all just our imagination, or it had a beginning, or matter is eternal, which is both of the second 2 options are in violation of the obvious laws of thermodynamics. Matter doesn't create itself. And everything degrades over time. So either it had a beginning or it didn't. If it had a beginning, then what was before the beginning? I mean, there's so many thousands of things you take by faith. You say, I say in the beginning God, and you say, well, this matter somehow either was always here or created itself, and then this matter somehow became alive, and then this first living thing learned how to reproduce, and then it learned how to make something other than its kind. I mean, even though nobody's ever seen that, nobody's ever seen a dog produce a non-dog. Or you mentioned about, you know, the dog fact that a wolf and a fox and a dog coming from a common ancestor off Noah's Ark in only 4,400 years. For heaven's sake, you believe they came from a rock. I mean, come on. I don't think my theory is that silly at all. So, if my answer to your question is still the same, I believe in the beginning God. I do take that by faith. Here's the major difference that I don't think you're going to understand. I admit mine is a religion. They do not admit theirs is a religion. They want you to think what they believe is science, and all of you should pay for their religion to be taught in this university.
Notice that the definition of intelligent design said pseudo-scientific. It also says that we make the assumption that it must be some supernatural being. Now, what you've seen in the video certainly does not prove anything about the God of the Bible, the Christian, the Jewish God. Doesn't prove that. But when something is supernatural, it means that it is beyond nature. So of course, whatever created this is supernatural. If you have a design, humans make all sorts of designs. If you make a design, it's quite obvious that there is a designer. You see a car, you know that there is a designer that designed that car. Everything that man has built, that man has designed, we know that this is not a natural process of selection, but that this design was made by a designer. Information always comes from an informant, an informer. A painting is made by a painter. So, is it really that far-fetched? Is it really that pseudo-scientific? Because the other option is that nothing created everything. That somehow the elements and the energy, as mentioned in the previous video, just came into existence. Matter can't be created, it can only, energy can't be created, it can only change states. Therefore, there is a source of energy, possibly an intelligent designer. So, how did all of these elements, 15 billion years of rain and thunder and lightning, and a lot of time. As long as you add a lot of time, it fixes all of the things that don't make sense in the theory of evolution. I look outside and I see trees. They take in oxygen. They take in CO2. They give out oxygen. There's the bronchial tree, an inverted tree. And it sucks in the oxygen and it releases the CO2. That's how interconnected we are. There's many symbiotic systems, ecological as well as biological. You've seen through the video, this simple cell, we call it a simple cell, but look how complex it is. Any part of those things that did not come together at the same time would not have, through processes of mutation and long amount of time, billions and billions of years, it would not function. It would go kaput from the start. When they talk about kinds, see, evolution talks about changing of kinds from bacteria or microorganisms, more complex. These bacteria change kind into, let's say, fish. And then those fish don't become more complex and different fishes in evolution. They say that then they became reptiles. And then those reptiles changed kinds into dogs and cats and all, vegetation even, all the animal kingdom. Now, there is something called speciation. So we could say that the prototypical animal, let's say from the canine family, that there was a original canine kind, and within its DNA it had all of these possible characteristics. I mean, we do speciation in a way when we breed different dogs. They've all come from an original dog. Yet we got big dog, little dogs, slobbering dogs, annoying dogs, pooing dogs, peeing dogs on your freaking couch. That's why I got rid of my dog. But no dog becomes a cat. And if we came from monkeys, I'm still waiting for a monkey to pop a human out. Maybe we just need more time. So what has man created that's original? Pharmaceuticals? No, the body already makes hormones. Plants, phytochemicals. So pharmaceuticals isn't a man-made invention. What about a TV or a camera lens? Is that original? No. Your eye is a lot more complex. It has a lens, has everything. Retina, lens, fovea centralis, all of that stuff. What about the electrical grid? No. Look at our nervous system. We have electrical wiring, and there's always that plastic sheath over it. It insulates it, allows the conduction of the current to propagate down. We have myelin sheath, we have fat layers and cholesterol over all of our nervous system wiring. It's a lot more of a complex current. What about gears and motors and all those things? In the video you saw, flagella, for example, all of these amazing complex machinery. It's more complex than all of the motors that we have. Computer, how is that compared to a brain? Binary systems on computers, how's that compared to DNA? It's quaternary in a triple helix. Anything else? Let's think about it, guys. Everything that we've created, knowing or unknowingly, is already there in nature, is already there in God's creation. There's a building, there's a builder. DNA is not just a bunch of proteins and molecules bunched together. It is a blueprint of how to create a human body, for example, the human DNA. Every single cell, the blueprint it's an information. There's information in DNA. It's a blueprint. Certain cells develop first as a baby develops. other cells than this cells? Why does it know to do this first and then that, and how to replicate? Because if there's information in DNA, then it means that there has to be an informer.